Okay, I wanted to hit the highlights. Charlie Kirk's letter from the letter that Charlie Kirk wrote to Bibi Netanyahu that was in question on Candace's show as well as other places. And she was saying, publish the full content, publish the full content. Well, I'm not sure who published this, but it was leaked to major news sources, and I believe it to be true, having read through it, and it sounds exactly like him to the point where there's some points that actually make you giggle a little bit, because if you can just see him saying it and being like, help me help you, what is wrong with you? But also people that know him and inside sources have believed this to be valid and from Charlie in the actual letter. So I also think that it's within the interest of the Israeli government and Bibi Netanyahu to publish this, because while he does critique Israel in here, it's from a vantage point of, I'm on your side. Like, why are you doing this to yourself? This is a PR nightmare, and you're really terrible at it. And that I can only imagine how bad that bothered Charlie, because he was, as he says in here, constantly defending Israel on college campuses, and if in different talks he would do, he understood the issue really well, both biblically and as a culture and political issue. And I think you can tell in this letter he's extremely frustrated, and he has critiques of Israel. He's been clear about that. And he is never afraid to say it when he does. He said it in real time, in real life when he did. And he says them in this letter. So maybe that's what Candace is talking about, but it's all from a vantage point, which of course she twists as a supporter of Israel, saying, this is what you need to do to be better at getting out information to the West and the public and Americans about what is going on over there. Because the only information that young Americans especially are hearing are through social media, and that is Hamas propaganda. And they're not getting anything from you because you're on the TV talking, and it's only you, Bibi. No other surrogates, no like rapid response team like Trump has on the news. It's just you, and you need to be present on social media. And so obviously Charlie Kirk was the best at that. So some of his major concerns he raises in here is basically all about how they need to have better PR, about the questions he's constantly having to combat, and about how he wants to suggest him having a rapid response team, many surrogates that can combat everything that's going on, firsthand accounts, and that he can find his own Stephen Miller and Caroline Levitt. This is so good. Stephen Miller did his memorial. And he's so sharp. And he's like, you need a total revamp, basically, of everything that you have going on over there. Okay, so here, I'm just going to hit some highlights that I thought were worth pointing out. I am going to read you the first little bit of the letter because I think it sets the tone for the rest of it, and so it will make sense. From the desk of Charlie Kirk is the title, Dear Mr. Prime Minister, one of my greatest joys as a Christian is advocating for Israel and forming alliances with Jews in the fight to protect Judeo-Christian civilizations. Just a note for Candace, here he says Judeo-Christian. He says it actually a few times in this letter. It's actually, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 times in this letter. And I would just like to point out that I'm also a Protestant Christian, and I believe exactly like Charlie, there's nothing I can actually find that I disagree with him on, that I've ever heard him talk about or write. And I don't refer to myself as a Judeo-Christian unless it's in a certain context like this. I refer to myself as a Christian. So I don't know what that was supposed to prove. I mean, obviously you've had to backtrack in becoming a Catholic, because it's Andrew Colvett has come out and said, no, this is not happening. And I could have told you that based upon what he said in his words and what he believed, which you clearly never understood, which is why you're so easily swayed on Israel. And I have some information that I have pulled from one of your podcasts that is very revealing about why that was possible for you, because you really had no belief to begin with of your own. And I am working on a video to go through all of the things that she has claimed about Israel from her own words, not what people have said she said, but from her own words. So I can document that because a lot of you have requested that. And so I am going to do that, but I want to do my due diligence and take my time with this. But this came just across social media, and so I wanted to just dive into this for a minute and give my thoughts in real time. And also just put it out there because it exists, and I will post it on, I will post this, probably just link it on my Facebook. Okay, so most recently, I'm proud to have taken over Ambassador Huckabee's show on TBN, where we continually support Israel and the Jewish people. As Mohammedanism spreads into Western societies, it is critical that Jews and Christians stay united in the effort to contain and roll back radical Islam and Sharia law. Charlie also deeply understood the teaching of Islam and the radicalism within and what it really espouses about eliminating Jews and Israel and any non-Muslims in the area and then throughout the world. That's what it actually teaches. And there has been much bloodshed throughout history by Muslims to convert by force and to take over areas. So no one wants to talk about that, but that is the truth. So Charlie was very aware of this. I regret to report that anti-Israel and anti-Semitic trends are at a record level on social media. These negative sentiments then flow downstream into college campuses and even seep into conservative MAGA community. So these are two of his main concerns that this is affecting. Is like this horrible PR that you have, or lack thereof, this outdated notion of how you're doing this when you are combating like real-time, current, updated propaganda from the other side and you're not doing anything about it. It's affecting not only the young people in college campuses, but the MAGA community. It's funny how neither Tucker nor Candace mentions that this is his key concern for writing this letter. As he sees the writing on the wall within MAGA circles, and it's very concerning to him because he has friends that are saying and doing these things. Now, do I think that Tucker has lied about things Charlie Kirk maybe said personally to him? No, I don't. I don't think I've already said this. I don't think he's at all in the same world and planet as Candace. I'm just pointing out that, of course, they left this part out. My team and I have spent months analyzing these trends and debating ideas that could help you and your country push back against these disturbing developments. Anti-Israel sentiment can undermine American support for Israel, which is absolutely true. So that is the purpose of this letter, is to lay out these concerns and the potential remedies, which the remedies are just really great and rich and really gave me a good laugh. Okay, so this is because they have a deep love of Israel, which is, I think, one of the things Netanyahu referred to when he was talking about the letter, and the Jewish people. So he said, written from a place of deep love for Israel and the Jewish people. But I think it's important to be brutally honest with the people that you love. And he said, I think you need a communications intervention, is basically what he says. So he said, I started to compose this letter on Easter. I should have been focused on my family, but I was getting bombarded with messages about the Israeli army making it difficult for Christians to access church in Jerusalem on Easter. And at the time, he did not see any official statements pushing back on this narrative. It was so frustrating because pro-Israel surrogates like me should not be in charge of fact-checking every piece of anti-Israel information that pours into our social media. It wasn't just Easter. On my recent campus tours, half the questions I get are about Israel, and they are all negative. He's like, this is a problem, and I shouldn't be the one doing all the work to combat it. That's your job. So he says a little bit more to that end, and then also gives him some data on how young people are polling as far as their support of Israel over Hamas. 48% of 18 to 24-year-olds actually support Hamas over Israel at this point, which is a terrorist organization. This is very alarming. Okay, so here's some of the things people say at his events. Israel is an apartheid state. Why does Israel conduct ethnic cleansing? Just an FYI on the apartheid state thing. There are almost 2 million Muslims living in Israel. Almost 2 million. You want to know how many Jews live in other parts of... They have the right to vote as well, and they can hold office. There's always going to be issues that they're minor in compared to when you look up the democracies and civil liberties of Jews elsewhere in the Middle East. Okay? They're non-existent. And when they say that they have religious freedom, when you read what's actually occurring, they don't. So there's almost 2 million Muslims that live in Israel. And like I said, they have the right to vote and hold office. How many Jews do you think are living in Turkey? Supposedly one of the most democratic, hybrid regimes. 14 to 17,000. That pales in comparison. Mostly in Istanbul. How many Christians do you think are living in Jordan, which shows up when you look up democracies in the Middle East? It shows up as a hybrid, so one of the better ones. How many do you think live there? No Jews. Basically no Jews to really speak of. Lebanon, 100 Jews. Maybe 100 Jews. Egypt, a few dozen to 120, somewhere in there. I think the exact estimates of Muslims in Israel is 1.78 million. That's 18.1% of the population in Israel. And they are the largest minority faith in Israel. But you don't see that returned for the Jews in anywhere in the Middle East. And it is the only democracy. You can go look it up, Candace. It is the only democracy. It's very clear. And you should do a deep dive on what the other ones that say they have the all these religious freedoms and all these other political freedoms that just don't actually exist, even if they say they do. Okay. Even your beloved Wikipedia points this out very clearly. Like, who cites that? Who cites Wikipedia? That's just ridiculous. Okay. So in my other video where I kind of go over her Israel claims, I'll probably show some maps on that. Okay. Above are just a sampling of the negative Israel Jewish comments. Okay. So sorry. Apartheid state, Israel conducting ethnic cleansing. Why is America subsidizing Israel genocide against the Palestinian people? As American, as you'll see in this letter, Charlie agrees and believes that Hamas is committing genocide against its own people. Is America aid helping to subsidize Israel's free healthcare? Israel and the Jews are running U.S. foreign policy. Israel and the Jews are responsible for 9/11. Defending Israel is not in our U.S. national interest. Why is Israel trying to drag us into the war in the Middle East? So this is a sampling of what he gets on college campuses. And he says, but he's like, I'm trying to convey to you that Israel is losing support even in conservative circles. He says this again. This should be a 5-alarm fire. He's like, alert, alert. This should be extremely alarming to you, because if this happens, you lose support in America for Israel. And without American support for Israel, it is very scary to think if they will even be able to exist. Because that is the goal of their enemies, is to wipe them off. From the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free. That means free of Jews, free of Israel, and free of non-Muslims in that area. That's what that means. So it's very scary. Okay, why is Israel killing so many innocent civilians in Gaza? This is what he's often asked. He says, I'm often asked, why are you killing so many civilians in Gaza? He said, I know Israel goes to great lengths by dropping flyers and even calling civilians to clear out of areas about to be bombed. I know Israel posts maps showing which areas should be evacuated. I know that Hamas uses civilians as human shields, but 90% of the younger generations get their news from social media and podcasts. And there's very little pushback or fact-checking by the Israeli government or pro-Israel supporters in the media. He said, especially on social media. Maybe you have a little bit on mainstream media. He's like, but they're not seeing any of it. And this is a huge problem. So Charlie's saying, I know this. He has inner contact with the Trump administration. Okay, so he's not getting, they know what's propaganda and what's not. And people always say, well, it's Israeli propaganda. I'm like, obviously they are not having any. They are very bad at it. So they can say one thing, like Bibi can get on TV and say one thing that isn't true, and people are like, oh, well, that's propaganda. I'm like, clearly they have a lack. They have a big lack of any PR or information getting out, firsthand source, and combating this stuff. And like that's the opposite of propaganda. They have a major problem of even combating any of the things that are actual lies. Okay, so I strongly suggest Israel not always depend on subcontracting. So he says, Prime Minister, I urge you to revamp your information warfare strategy from top to bottom. He said they do a lot of subcontracting with their information war efforts to surrogates in America. And he's like, you've got to stop doing this. It needs to be firsthand. Here's his recommendations. He says, my team and I have worked, and here are unsolicited recommendations. Okay, for starters, you need a rapid response media team like President Trump has. So he's like, where are your people that our only job is to immediately respond to these allegations? That's what you need to keeping up on social media. He's like, you need your own Stephen Miller and Caroline Levitt. That's when he says that. He did such a good job at the memorial. He's so sharp. Like, yes, you need your own people like that. So he says a little bit about that. Number 2, I strongly recommend putting together a team of pro-Israel experts who can fact check misinformation in real time. So he's saying, create this rapid response network. Find these superstars that are going to be able to speak as you, because you are good at it, but you can't do it all. And you should have a team. And then get a larger team of experts, of pro-Israel experts that can fact check in real time, so that you can push out these rebuttals. And then it says, Israel never asks for American troops because Israel does its own fighting. I suggest the same approach for your information war. Like, do it. You're capable. Number 3, you need something perhaps like an Israeli Truth Network. So he's coming up with an actual network for for Bibi Netanyahu and Israel to consider, which I just think is so funny because he's like, it can include social media channels and a one-stop source for information website where, for example, all the negative Israel questions I get can be thoroughly debunked. He's like, I would love to be able to refer students to that website. So I'm not doing all of it and say, actually, you can go here and check this out. So he's got the ITN, the Israel Truth Network he's suggesting. He said it can be a place where once again, Christian leaders and groups can share information and form closer alliances in the fight against Islamic fundamentalism. Here he's using that phrase again, which Candace Owens can hardly spew out of her mouth to say the word Judeo-Christian. I'm like, it's biblical, Candace. Charlie's using it again here in context because we as Christians use Judeo-Christian in context when it is called for, but not in our everyday lives. We call ourselves Christians. I know that might be a newsflash for people like her. ITN social media can post pro-Israel Judeo-Christian, again, says it. And then ITN could potentially be a news aggregation site for all news pertaining to Israel and Judeo-Christian efforts to preserve Western civilization. So this is what he thinks the purpose of ITN should be, to pro-Israel Judeo-Christian video clips, breaking news and articles, and to a site for all news pertaining to Israel and Judeo-Christian efforts to preserve Western civilization. That's the purpose of the Israel Truth Network. Okay. Number 4, have you considered inviting some of the released hostages to go on a speaking tour in the U.S.? Are you kidding me? Yes. People forget so easily because they're constantly inundated by the legacy media and the propaganda from Hamas and all over social media about all the bad things Israel is doing in Gaza. But barely anyone is seeing what has happened to those hostages, what's currently happening, what has happened, the atrocities that were committed against them, reminded of what happened on October 7th, unprovoked. They are not colonizers. They're not occupying you. They have been in that land given to them by God since when Abraham walked to Canaan, okay? And since Abraham started that journey, okay? That's how long they've been in that land. So I don't even want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Because they are not colonizers. It's just ridiculous. It's like calling the Native Americans colonizers. It's so stupid. Makes me so mad. Okay. Have you ever considered this? I think this is such a great suggestion. And how the Gazan civilians never showed them any empathy or compassion. Hamas is committing the genocide. This is what he says. All of your spokespeople should be arguing that Hamas is the one committing genocide against their own people, using civilians as human shields and storing weapons in schools and hospitals. That information drips out on regular media, but is almost non-existent on social media. It's so true. Okay, so he didn't believe that they're committing a genocide. People have tried to say that with the clip where he says, was it a stand down order, which he said right after October 7th. I watched the episode of him, and he was talking about, this is so bizarre because I've seen the border. Like, how could it take him 6 hours? It's 30 minutes. Like, I've been on a helicopter. Like, I understand, like, what happened. And he later realized it was a complete failure of Israeli intelligence, which he references here. But he was never afraid to openly say his thoughts or what he would, how he would critique Israel, anybody else. He got a lot of pushback for that, but he was just asking questions. And so, I think he's saying here, they're committing the genocide. And when he used the term, ethnic cleansing, he was speaking of the mandate that they had after October 7th in that clip. When he asked about the stand down order, he was speaking about the mandate that they had from the Israeli people and a lot of the world at that time too. They could have literally wiped them off the map. That's what he's talking about. They would have been within their right. They basically had an order from the people, which is what America would have done. We would have wiped them off the map. That's a fact. We wouldn't have messed around. We would have just wiped them off the map. We probably wouldn't have sent out flyers and said, evacuate these areas. We're coming in here, here, and here. We probably would have just done it because they came in and raped and murdered women and children and civilians. I mean, seriously, can you imagine if someone came in and did that in America, what we would do? Okay. Maybe another suggestion, number 5, maybe we should interview regular Israelis on the streets asking them what they love about their country. Interview Jews, Israelis, Arabs, Druze, Orthodox, secular, etc. Israelis What do they wish the world knew about Israel? Have them give examples of misinformation. Interview from people from all walks of life, and he said you can call it, dude, you got us wrong. So good. It's so good. But again, you can interview people from all walks of life because people from all walks of life live in Israel and have rights as citizens and voting. And I know there's some nuance there, but you have to understand that that state was made to protect Jewish people. Okay, but there are millions of Muslims living there free, and there are lots of Christians living there free. And it did really bother me. I do think that Tucker is truly seeking truth on this issue, but I think he is jaded by the fact that he's so mad that he had supported the Iraq War. I think that he is so disgusted by all the warmongers, not obviously not Charlie Kirk, but people that are so for all these foreign wars. And he's like, I'm not going to be anywhere near your side because I'm so sick of your lies and how you, like Nikki Haley and those people that's like flip him out, that it's kind of jaded his view on this subject. Because when he's talking about pursuing the persecution of Christians, he said a lot of good things on the subject. But when he had that Orthodox nun on that lives in Gaza, if I'm not mistaken, I believe is George Padozopoulos' sister, which is also kind of odd. But he asked her, how are the Christians faring in Gaza? Like, what is the state of Christians in Gaza? And she answered the state of Christians in Israel. She didn't answer the question. He didn't push back on it. And there's some like things that could maybe be better, but they are not being persecuted. They live free there. And yes, there are issues, but when you look, like I said, if you want to look at the surrounding areas, and there are no other democracies in the Middle East, but if you want to look at the surrounding areas, and I just said on my video some of the data points of all the other areas in the Middle East, and the fact that Israel even allows Muslims to be voting and be citizens and hold office is so like a different planet than anywhere else in the Middle East, is crazy. To then we only always criticize Israel. People, this is something else Charlie Kirk said. If you're going to constantly criticize Israel, then you need to spend 2% of your time doing that and 98% of your time criticizing the rest of the Islamic world and what they're doing. And I hope that Tucker Carlson gets to that point and he starts shedding light on what's happening to Christians and the way they're being martyred and hunted down around the world. And a lot of it is by communist regimes and Islam. Okay? So let's just be real clear about who the issue is. Not Israel. Not Israel. It is all of this other stuff that needs to be highlighted, and it's not talked about. And that really irritates me. Okay. Let Israelis explain in their own words. Israel is a pluralistic society, a free country with elected leaders, unlike all of the surrounding authoritarian Arab nations. And that is exactly correct. I did a dive. You can go and look it up on democracies and civil liberties in the Middle East. Okay. Airplanes warn civilians to get out of harm's way. They go so far to be able to do this to prevent civilian casualties while fighting an enemy that is putting civilians in front of them as human shields. I mean, give me a break, guys. Like, you can see evil very clearly if you're just looking, if you're willing to look and you don't have an agenda. Okay. So he asked about, it would have been nice to see an Israeli plane with the Star of David arrive in U.S. full of supplies after a hurricane. It would have been nice to see, if you've given any technology to the U.S. to help them, as Trump has discussed. Effective messaging with Israel is a close ally of America. You need to have your team be the team of humanity and make that very clear for everybody. Social media are aware of the billions in supplies. People on social media, consumers, are aware of the billions we send to Israel, but they are less aware of what America gets from you. And you need to make this very clear. And I think that is absolutely true. And how media is a great friend of America and is vital to U.S. national security. I think this is so crucial for people to understand. And he also tells him, okay, when you do your videos on your ITN network, make sure they're 1 minute or less, easy for people to digest and watch, and that that there should, people like me, Israel, it says influencers and surrogates like me, which is what he considered himself, influencers and surrogates, that's what he considered himself, of Israel, to promote the original work that you provide. He's like, mate, help me, help you. Okay, Iran. Israel could do a better job explaining the Iranian event, the threat. He says, we were told, my generation grew up, that we were promised WMDs in Iraq, which proved to be a lie. And then he says, and then we were lied to by the U.S. and Israel about the COVID vaccine being safe and effective. Lie. Israel intelligence missed October 7th. But again, we're supposed to trust Israeli intelligence 100% that they are obtaining nuclear weapons. He's like, this is a problem. So you need a lot more information put out there explaining this to the public, especially on social media, so young people see it too, to combat why we should trust you on this and what the evidence is for it. And I think this is absolutely true. I agree with everything he just said. We just don't fully trust intelligence assessments. So I think that that's a very fair point. And maybe one of the things that Candace said he wasn't including when he was saying what he said, but it wasn't really the time, right? Like he'd just been killed. I mean, let's have some respect. She obviously doesn't understand that concept. Okay. He said, these arguments are getting a lot of blowback in MAGA circles. That's true. Again, he's very concerned about this. This is his main concern, is that this is now deteriorating amongst MAGA circles, which is your core support in America. Okay. Many agree with you, myself included, that Iran should not get nuclear weapons. I share the concern that America will get sucked into another endless war costing thousands of American lives. He's like, both of those things can be true. I can think they shouldn't get nuclear weapons and also worry about getting sucked into another endless war. We don't want that. Okay. Number 7, paradigm shift is needed in how Israel presents itself to the world on social media. He's like, we have just got to completely redo this. And he says, think of Israel as a political candidate. In this case, a young girl who grew up on social media. He's like painting the story. I think it's hilarious. She's the candidate. What does she stand for? Who is she? Political campaigns face this all the time. The first and foremost thing they need to do is define the candidate. I think this is so great. So then he goes on in this paragraph, and it's pretty lengthy, but he basically is helping them understand how to handle objections about themselves. And that's why he suggests this political candidate. Like, let's define her. What does she stand for? Handle the most controversial topics in a one-stop shop so that young people especially can watch these clips. You know, it can all be under this new network that he's told them, the ITN network, and everything can stem from that. He said what your PR basically at this point is malpractice. So this is what Charlie Kirk was really good at. He was really good at handling objections, and he started off at the beginning doing a lot of political objections, and he got really good at his biblical worldview handling objections with that too. And I want everyone to know that you can be good at handling objections. Just take 3. Start off with just a few. I did this when I was in network marketing for a decade with Rodan and Fields. There was like 10 major objections that I got really good at handling, but I started off just learning 2 or 3 that were the most common, and then I built from there. And that's what Charlie did politically and with his faith, and just work on that. In the conservative movement, you can pick a moral one, you can pick a cultural one, a more political one, and an economic one, and go from there and build from there, right? And in your faith, there are like 3 main objections that everything almost stems for. Why does God let bad things happen to good people? How do we know that Jesus is the only way to God? And is the Bible really true? How can we believe in the Bible as an inerrant and something that we can foundationally be historically accurate, geologically accurate, and that we can say, okay, the Bible is true. Let's move from there. So those are like the 3 core objections, pertaining when people say, well, why did this happen? Why does evil exist? Well, it goes back to why does God let bad things happen to good people, or how does God allow evil, that kind of thing. So just pick a few things to start with, and you can get really good at it too. And he's basically saying, and of course, Charlie is another level. Like, nobody should be comparing themselves with Charlie, because he's another level. But he also asked people like Frank Turek, who's an apologist, to help him get better, help him come up with one-liners, help him say, hey, is this good? This is the way I would answer this. What do you think? That's how you get better at it. It really is. So he's saying to Bibi, you need to do this. Miss Israel's platform, have a platform for her where her positions and values are explained. So good. Fake news becomes real news if there's not effective pushback. Yes. When a candidate is hit with negative campaign ads, the effective response is for the candidate to personally respond to these attack ads. Okay? I want to revisit that statement. Fake news becomes real news if there's not effective pushback. This is exactly why I'm doing rebuttals on Candace, because, and I know other people are too, but like from a biblical perspective, from a Judeo-Christian perspective, it needs to be done. It just needs to be done. I've had enough. Okay, so he said, I do the third person, but it really is like me almost being a defense lawyer of the candidate. You need first person accounts. And then he talks about TikTok. I get billions of views on TikTok. Elon is a friend of Israel, and X offers a great opportunity to make inroads on social media. He greatly encourages them to do that. 53% of Americans now have an unfavorable view of Israel, up from 42% 3 years ago. This is alarming. This is very alarming. Okay, so the front lines of this information were on social media. So he just really hammers that home. And he said his Hasbara budget, which is the Israeli PR towards the West, mostly towards Western countries, he's increased that by 20 times. He was like, listen, let's up that. Let's get all of the hundreds of millions of dollars raised by pro-Israel groups, and let's fund that Truth Network, the Israel Truth Network. To sum up, you perhaps should consider reshaping your Hasbara department into into more of a political campaign headquarters with campaign narrative experts. It could be the mothership hosting ITN, where the messaging campaign can be created and then distributed to all pro-Israel groups and thoughts and leaders. He said the staff should be in their 20s and 30s, having grown up with social media and cell phones, not pay phones and TV news. I was like, this is so funny. This looks like a scene. Oh, it said, I've seen your IDF spokesperson defend Israel standing in a dimly lit podium. This looks like a scene out of the 1970s, like some old Walter Cronkite clips of the TV news. I thought that was so funny. He's like, seriously, like what is happening? What century are you living in? Or decade. Okay, and then Mr. Prime Minister, you're an eloquent defender of Israel. But often not on social media, and many of your clips are in Hebrew. Why don't you do more press conferences in Israel in English? Takes on some of the tough questions. And also, where are your surrogates? Again, he can't remember the last time you saw an Israeli spokesperson. It's almost always Bibi on Fox, which of course, Candace is like, if you have to come out and deny that you were a part of the hit on Charlie Kirk, that doesn't say that, what does that say about you? I'm like, well, if you have to come out and deny constantly they're anti-Semitic, what does that say about you, Candace? But even deeper than that, the point is they have terrible PR. And here you have the prime minister doing this is so ridiculous and outdated. Like, they have got to get with the times. And that's what he's saying. I mean, Trump, you see Trump, like, look at what's happening. He's got 1 million people really great at speaking for him. He doesn't even have to fight all the battles he used to. Israel is the Silicon Valley of the Middle East. This is what Charlie believed. I think that's absolutely true. They're completely capable of this. He's like, you have the brain power and the technological expertise. He said, Israel is getting crushed on social media and you're losing younger generations of America. This is in closing. Even among MAGA conservatives. In my opinion, you are losing the information war, which will eventually translate into less political and military support from America. The Holy Land is so important to my life, and it pains me to see support for Israel slip away. Feel free to contact me on my private number, so he gives his number, if you want to discuss this further. Charlie understood that if anyone gains control of that area of the Holy Land, we won't have access to it. You won't be able to go visit the place where Christ walked. You won't be able to go visit those holy sites, because are you planning a trip soon to one of the Islamic nations? Is that what you're doing? You planning that trip soon? Yeah, probably not. So why don't we start focusing on the real issues facing us and the real threat, instead of constantly blaming Israel and pointing out all their flaws. There are many flaws. Their government is not sacred, it's secular. But the Bible mandates us as Christians to support Israel. And Charlie believed in that. He believed in the prophecies to come, the Davidic prophecies to come, that Christ will fulfill, and that it talks about in Revelation as a literal interpretation. That's what I believe as well. There are many people, including Candace Owens, that believes that they've been replaced by the church. And for her, that means the Catholic Church, because salvation comes through the Catholic Church, and that's what they believe. But she has done away with saying that the Abrahamic covenant, that's been replaced by the church. So, we don't really need to worry. The Jews are not really in that plan. God doesn't have a plan for them. He's done with them because they rejected Christ. And that's not what I believe. That's not what Charlie believed. And there are different interpretations of scriptures on that. And I'm on the same camp as Charlie, which is why he could never ended up where Candace ended up. Like I said, I have a clip of her on one of her shows that I'm going to show in the video that I'm making about her claims about Israel, where she says she never had her own view on Israel, which is why she was able to switch on a dime, because she was just going with what everyone else thought. Charlie would never end up in the same place as her, which is what she's espousing on Catholicism and this, which Catholicism has already been debunked because his friend came out and had to say it. I mean, why are you doing this? Like, that's fine. Like, he's a Protestant, you're a Catholic. That's okay. You do not have to make him you, which it seems like that's what you're trying to do. So quit. Just quit doing this. It's out of control. It's out of line. It's completely disrespectful. And making it Erica's problem to come out and stop you as a grieving widow who's already got enough on her plate. Like, that's not a friend. It's not a friend. So I think that it's important for us as Christians to realize what the biblical worldview lens is on this, and that in the Bible, it says, bless those that bless us, bless those that bless you, curse those that curse you. That still stands back in Genesis 12, Genesis 15, and following, and multiple times in Scripture and in Revelation. There is a plan. God is not done with Israel, is not done with the Jews. I truly believe that. And there are obviously different denominations within Christendom that believe differently, and that's okay. But it does apply here, and it matters, because if you don't believe there's a future in Christ for the Israelites, and you don't believe that the Abrahamic covenant is physical, forever, and unconditional, then you don't have that same belief system that we are biblically called to support Israel and the Jewish people, and that God greatly still cares about that land and has physical plans for it. Then it's easier to get sucked in by all of these things that are going on right now, making Israel out to be the enemy, because it is run by humans, because it is flawed, because it does have corruption, because they do get things wrong, right? But we're not comparing them against a tyranny of the perfect. No one expects any government to be perfect, but they're pretty darn good, especially given the circumstances. And they are ally, and they are a democracy, and they do have freedom for their people, even non-Jews. So we really need to put things into perspective and have it under a biblical lens, but also be rational about this and stop getting so focused on Israel being the problem when they're not. And we can have opinions on the way the war should be fought, on the way that it should be executed, when it should end, things we don't want to do, things we do want to do, American support for that, how much money we're giving, there should be accountability. All of those things are true. You can criticize, you can say what you want, you can ask questions. But don't get sucked in by all this propaganda crap, and realize that people on the inside that really knew what was going on internally with America, internally with the president, internally with information, this was their plea. This was his plea to Israel to be their own, stop being their own worst enemy, essentially, and do better at getting truth out there. Okay, I'm done. That's the letter. I'm going to post the full thing on my social media pages.